Good morning. I'm just getting on my bicycle and starting my daily journey on my bicycle. This time I take a little bit of a different route than before. I'm first going down the street and then I'll be going into the park. On this video I want to talk about the fact of my life that I only want to have embodied language. I have no interest at all in disembodied language. I only want to have embodied language, which is the language in which I, as a speaker, listen to myself, and in which you, as a speaker, also listen to yourself, and in which we together stimulate each other to continue to listen to ourselves. That is what I want. That is what my life is about. That is what ongoing embodied language entails. And so, because I am capable of doing this, because I am already doing this, I consider myself more important than, let's say, Donald Trump. I consider myself more important than Kamala Harris. I consider myself more important than Jordan Peterson or Joe Rogan or Anderson Cooper or anybody out there, Chuck Schumer, Nancy Pelosi. I consider myself more important than any of these people because none of these people are listening to themselves. Barack Obama, Bill Clinton, Hillary Clinton, they do not listen to themselves while they speak. And Victor David Hansen also doesn't listen to himself while he speaks. And Noam Chomsky also doesn't listen to himself while he speaks. And neither does Steven Pinker, and neither does Daniel Dennett. He is dead and gone, but he was also not listening to himself while he speaks. And actually there has never been anybody who, like me, can talk about listening to himself. Could also, of course, be a woman. There's never been a woman who could talk about listening to herself in the way that I do. And why is that? That's not because I am such an incredible intellect or such an incredible gifted person. No, it is because I have explored since my 20s the difference between what it is like to listen to myself and to not listen to myself while I speak. And of course, when I say I listen to myself, I engage in embodied language, and this way of speaking sets the stage for how I deal with my language. So my whole perception, if you will, or no, I wouldn't call it perception actually. It is my way of using language is determined by how I speak. And so if you do not listen to yourself while you speak, if you do not listen to yourself, then your way of using language will be entirely different than when you listen to yourself while you speak. And I want to continue with my way of using language because it's not just a matter of listening to myself. No, it is really about this way of using language effectively, correctly, realistically, intelligently, sensitively, sensibly, that is really what is needed, in my opinion. And so none of these people that I just mentioned, and I can add to the list, Amy Goodman from Democracy Now, or Joy Reid, or Joe Behar, or whatever their names are, Whoopi Goldberg, Oprah Winfrey, Dr. Phil, Jordan Peterson, name them, Sam Harris, Richard Dawkins. You can sum them all up. All the hotshots, Ben Shapiro, you can mention all of them. Jesse Waters, you can name them all, and I've heard them all, and none of them have embodied language, but I do, And I want you to know in this video how important it is, in spite of all the challenges, because there are many challenges that will prevent us or that will sway us from having embodied language. In spite of all these challenges, we can have embodied language. We should have embodied language. And if we do, we will have the consequences of our embodied language rather than the consequences of our disembodied language. I don't have any consequences anymore. My whole life I've been trying to catch up with the consequences of my disembodied language, and I believe I've sort of caught up with myself at long last. And being able to catch yourself while you have disembodied language, while you forget how important it is, good morning, to listen to yourself when you forget that, and then you listen again to yourself, you go back on track again. Every time you do that, you gain knowledge, you gain a new understanding of the importance of continuing with it. Even though you know very well, and it's also very important to be realistic about that, you know very well that all these challenges are real. All these challenges are there, which surround us everywhere, because people are conditioned, you were conditioned to have disembodied language. Now, so I only want to have embodied language, and yes, if there's nothing to say, I'll just wait, and something will either come or it won't. And if it does, it is again embodied language. And if it doesn't, then there is no language. So if you happen to be listening to this video, you can witness together with me each moment in which language is there and each moment in which there is no language. And I will make some deliberate pauses for you also, which I can do. I can do that. You cannot. I can very deliberately and without any lack of my natural way of being, I can say, okay, I can stop my language at any time. Just like I can stop riding my bicycle, I can stop my language anytime. And perhaps I will even demonstrate one by doing the other. So for instance, I can stop riding my bicycle in a little bit. Once I cross this street, I can stop riding my bicycle and I can let you know that I have also stopped my language. And then you can recognize for yourself that of course you can do this too, but you've never done this because you believe something about language which isn't true. You believe, here, I'm going to stop my bicycle now. Just going to stop on this side of the road. Okay. I'm just going to walk for a little bit. Here, I've stopped my bicycle. And I've stopped my language. And I'll continue walking for a little bit while I have stopped my language. And so I hope you notice that the absence of my language is simply a matter of me not saying anything and you not hearing anything. It's as simple as that. And the language that you imagine I have inside of me, or the language that you imagine to have inside of you, is just imagination. It doesn't exist. Okay, I start riding my bicycle again. And as you can see now, I'm without language, even while I'm riding my bicycle. And you can recognize that riding my bicycle or not has nothing to do with whether I use language. Although not riding my bicycle perhaps may help you to bring attention to the fact that when I stop talking, there is no language. Riding my bicycle may create the impression as if something is continuing when I'm riding my bicycle, but I'm not speaking. But there is a complete discontinuation between the moment that I say something and the moment that I don't say something. Even in between the words that I speak, you can hear there's an absence of language in between. Perhaps you should start there. Yeah? You should start there with noticing that there is no language when I don't produce it, when I don't do it. Had to be careful there. A whole bunch of cars. So what we are dealing with when we have embodied language is a whole new understanding of what language is. As I've said many times, and as I am saying here again, language has never been an internal matter. Language does not happen inside of you. And to be clear on that is only possible with embodied language. You may have understood this, yeah, maybe you've had some embodied language, maybe you have listened to me a little bit, and you've sort of, for yourself, begin to recognize that it is true, what I'm saying. But that doesn't mean that your conditioning history with disembodied language is finished. No, your conditioning history with disembodied language continues, and you continue to imagine that language happens inside of you. And unless you switch from your disembodied language to your embodied language, and unless you too continue with your embodied language, you are bound to fall victim to the imaginary process of having inner language, of having a mind, of having thoughts, of having an internal experience of some sort. No, you don't have an internal experience of some sort. Yes, there is stuff going on inside your body, I know that. Your digestion and your breathing and your heart beating and blood going through your veins. That is all happening. But there's nothing happening in terms of what you describe as your experience. Yeah? Your experience is only a matter of you being able to talk about that experience. And that can only happen if you have ongoing embodied language. That is prevented by your usual disembodied language. So yeah, when you have no language, there is no experience. For experience to be there, there's got to be an experiencer and the experience. Yeah? So there is going to be the experience and the description of the experience. So that means the occurrence of language. And you can compare it, of course, it is not really comparing, but it is perhaps a way of referring to, being without an experience is when you are in deep sleep yeah, you are of course laying in your bed and you are just sleeping, but you're not having any dream, you're not having any movement, you don't know you are in your bed, you are gone. Yeah. And in the same way, when you are without language, yeah, you are gone. You are no longer there, or no longer there. Actually, you could also say you are really there, because in the sleep state, you are unconscious of yourself. But in the waking state, you are kind of conscious about being unconscious. These are just words, of course, to refer to what I'm talking about. Because you can describe with your language correctly that you are without language. And you can also describe with your language correctly that you are with language. And you are only correctly with language when you have embodied language. And you are incorrectly with language when you have disembodied language. So it's an exploration anybody can pursue. Nothing is stopping you from verifying that what I say is true. Again, I want to reiterate that when you are without language, you are without an experience. And yet you know you're there. And we have called that consciousness, but that's not cutting it. That's not clarity. That's not real knowledge. That's not how it comes about. That's not how language works. What we call consciousness is of course brought about by the correct use of our language. And what we have fantasized about consciousness is exactly the opposite. Is the absence of language. And yeah, we can fantasize all sorts of things, doesn't mean it's true. So it is the presence of language, of embodied language, that allows us to be without language. I find it fascinating. Good morning. So, again, as you listen to me, I want you to know very certainly that, yeah, you may have heard of gurus and stuff like that. Yeah, you may have heard of maybe Osho or anti-gurus like Krishnamurti, gurus like or masters of, yeah, they have been called masters, Lao Tse, or you know, or what are their names, Gurdjieff, or you know, enlightened people. Yeah, we have had people who are saints supposedly. Yeah, and these people are supposed to be wise. Yeah, no, they are not wise. They do not know. None of our so-called saints, none of our gurus, none of our enlightened ones have ever spoken about what I call embodied language. Do you recognize that? Or are you still in denial about that? If you cannot accept that I am the only one who is speaking about that, you are in denial about that. And that is the very reason why you don't have embodied language. So let's be upfront about this. Your lack of embodied language is based on your... Good morning. Your lack of embodied language is based on your denial of who I am. You could have already acknowledged me a long time ago. I have been around for many years saying this, and yet look at the amount of people that are watching what I am publishing. Look at the amount of people that have been taking the opportunity to read my writing. It's dismal. But it's your loss, it's not my loss. I have, in spite of the lack of support, in spite of the lack of recognition, continued with my embodied language. And here, this video is the proof. You have been not just in denial of me. It's nothing personal that you do not listen to yourself while you speak. It is almost like a universal problem that people engage in disembodied language, in which listening to others or making other people listen to you is more important than listening to yourself. Or more important, listening to yourself doesn't even get any attention. It never even occurs as something that could happen, something that needs to happen, something that is important. You have been always in denial of this possibility. And so it has nothing to do with me personally and recognizing me personally. No, it has actually everything to do with you being able to truly be yourself. And yes, you could not be yourself because you didn't listen to yourself. You didn't speak with yourself. And you didn't speak with yourself to be able to listen to yourself. Yeah? As long as you speak with yourself in a way that you still don't want to hear it, that you're still producing language which doesn't work for you, language which is disembodied, language which obviously expresses the fact that you are in conflict with yourself. What does it mean, that conflict with yourself? The conflict with yourself is simply that your experience doesn't match with your description of your experience. Now, okay. So when are you ever going to adjust your language to your experience? You are only going to do that if you begin to listen to yourself. Yeah. Now, I'm reaching the freeway here. When I go underneath the freeway, that will be the conclusion. That freeway represents your disembodied language, your noisy disembodied language. Yeah. Do you hear it? This is the freeway. I go underneath the freeway.